welcome to another FaceHammer video, and we've got a very special video today. We're joined by a very special guest, Kirioth, so thank you very much for coming on.
Absolutely. I don't know. I wouldn't say very special, like passable. Passable is fine.
Yeah, definitely special. Look at you. Although I don't know which way I should be pointing.
Down.
Or where people are.
You're
Hello.
at the top. You're at the top, Byron, as always.
Special. Are we going in head size order, top to bottom? Are we?
Probably. We're forming a totem of faces at the moment, which is quite nice.
So build a solid base. It's like a snowman, isn't it?
Are you calling me the solid base? I'll take that.
Yes.
That's fine.
Solid base field. That's quite a good
all right,
one.
I am a bit of a boulder, but that's like those Atlas stones you've been lifting. But anyway,
Yeah, got to work up to them.
in this video, we'll be taking Kirioth through how to play AOS and come up with an army, because you're interested in
AOS.
cross-pollinating, I guess is the term you used, which will probably set Byron's hay fever off, but there you go.
If I start crying, that's why.
But before we get into that, it's probably a good idea just to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself and what we're about. So if you'd like to take it away, Kirioth, it'd be good to hear from you.
Well, I mostly just record ramblings on just models in general. Mostly Games Workshop, but pretty much anything that catches my eye or takes my fancy. And for the most part, it's been 40k based. But over the last couple of years, I've started to kind of lean into Age of Sigmar stuff because it all looks so good. Like every time a new army is released or a new model is released, I end up sitting there and staring at it and going, this looks great, and I really want an excuse to own this. Yeah. And it's kind of it's just slowly progressed to the point where now there's like a bunch of undead Sylvanas stuff on the shelf behind me, and there's like a kind of Realm of Metal Gargants going on, and weird kind of monstrosity creatures that I've just kind of seen bits from the Age of Sigmar range and gone, I want to do something with that. And I suppose after a point, you kind of need a reason to use them instead of just endlessly stockpiling models and going, it looks great, but I don't actually play the thing. So
it's nice to show them the light of day as well, isn't it? Because for people who aren't familiar with your stuff, you put a pretty colossal amount of your effort and time into converting the living hell out of them, basically, don't you? And turning them into extra special nightmares.
Yeah, I kind of have a mild allergy to putting things together like you should, like following the instructions. And so it's a lot of the
probably easier than building the kit straight out the box at the moment. So you're a winner there.
Having put together a tree lord, that was a challenge, and I didn't convert that one as much as I converted some of the other stuff, and I feel like I probably should have done because it might have been a little bit easier. But yeah, just like even the Sylvanas stuff by itself has had, I don't know how many tens of hours put into it, and actually using it for something that would be really nice.
Well, we're at a pretty good time for this, aren't we? So just to be completely clear for everyone, you've played 40k quite a lot. You've got more into painting and modeling. You have never ever played Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, 8th edition, or anything?
I technically have played one single game of Age of Sigmar, which was the weekend that it launched.
Oh, man.
So, like when Fantasy Battles died and Age of Sigmar was brought out, the weekend that it launched, a friend of mine who I used to have another channel with, way back, decided that we would stream playing Age of Sigmar for the first time, having never looked at the rules before, having assembled the models that day, and it was fun. I don't remember a huge amount of it. I also think we got 90% of it wrong because like he didn't play 40k at that time, or at least nowhere near regularly, so he didn't even have the basis of that. And that was when, if I remember right, there wasn't points values, if I remember correctly. It was just, here's a unit of this, here's a unit of that, and there was no specification as to how many models were in that unit. It was just
dark days, we like to refer to them as.
We effectively, it was interesting. The Wild West of Age of Sigmar, where the tournament organisers at the time come up with their own packs, and like we come up with the Clash of Swords with Mo for his event, and then I ended up doing the South Coast pack, and I've been involved in the sort of the play test and the design stuff from then. But yeah, the early days was very much like when you were a kid and you played, and it was like, get your models out your box, put them on the table and push them around. And I think it was just a little bit too
People need rules to have fun, don't they? Like, I don't think anyone in the world has ever thought that putting, 24 players on a pitch and saying play a game involving a ball would ever work. So why would, like,
make up go
there's 2 nets, off you pop. Yeah. So,
do you imagine just a pile of like posts and nets and a ball and come up with a game? You're like,
just go. Yeah. Now, do it, play.
Exactly. And obviously it wasn't quite that bad, but it did feel very, very directionless. So we are now in a completely different spot from that. We've got the most rules that have ever been for Age of Sigmar. We've gone from 4 pages to 40. Don't know what it is. Quite a lot more at any rate. And it is, in my opinion, it is the best version of the game that has ever existed by quite a long shot, I would say as well. I think it feels pretty... player experience has been prioritized. Both the player whose turn it is and the player whose turn it isn't has been prioritized at a level that's never been in the game before. And I'd say, as far as interaction and player experience goes, we are in the best spot we've ever been in.
So obviously we probably should get into the sort of the nuts and bolts of this. So you've obviously got an idea in your head what takes your fancy. And whenever I go to build an army list, it always starts from a core concept. So that might be a gaming concept, or it might be a model concept. So I'm assuming you've got really good taste because we've got matching headsets. So what army was taking your fancy?
Well, funnily enough, given the massive influx of Soulblight Gravelords models, it's Soulblight Gravelords. Admittedly, slightly different though, because as I've already said, I can't put anything together without having to mess with it significantly. And I kind of have, especially the last 6 months or so, I've very much had a bit of a focus on just making like nightmarish creatures and kind of Lovecraftian things. And I really like doing armies that have got mostly larger models, just because I find them a lot more
bigger, better.
Yeah, I find them a lot more fun to convert and paint. Like I would say the Sylvanas stuff that I've done was using like Spite Revenants and Tree Revenants. Even those are like, they're not like small models, and they have a very kind of distinct style that works really well for the kind of thing that I wanted to do.
Also quite forgiving, because if it doesn't look right, you can put a tree branch there and hide the bit that didn't look okay.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot to mess with on even the smaller models for them. But really, I've kind of expanded back out to doing almost what I've done in 40k before, which is there's 4,000 points of Space Marine Dreadnoughts on the top shelves behind me, because I just ended up making a bunch of ridiculous Dreadnoughts, and then I moved into doing things like Chaos Knights and an Armoured Company. It's all larger models just because I really like being able to do kind of significant conversions to them and having something that looks almost totally different to what it would normally, but still being the same base model and still being kind of recognizable as like what it says on the data sheet. So for the Soulblight stuff, as soon as when I was looking at the new releases and Lauka Vai was revealed, I love that model. And as soon as they said, and you can take a bunch of massive kind of undead creatures as like your main kind of battle line, like troops equivalent, I just went, that's it then. That's what I want to do. I want that massive monstrosity, and I want to then make a load of other ones to go along with her. So that's kind of where my mind immediately went with that, because I like the idea of having a bunch of just like big scary creatures running around.
Absolutely. So do you say it's 60 mil and up? If you were to have a smaller base size, that is it like larger than X?
I'd say probably, I reckon about 60 or so is like anything bigger than that is a lot of nice, it's a lot of fun, and it's really nice to mess with stuff that's larger, but that kind of feels like the sweet spot where there's enough space to do lots of different things from model to model, but you're also not spending, hours and hours just trying to get this one thing to work. Like, I wouldn't want to do another like Chaos Knights army to the same extent that I've done one for 40k, because like a single knight, one of them took almost 20 hours just to get the gun to work.
Big, but too big. Scrutinize. His shoulder is absolutely massive, so you can see what's going right or wrong very easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of list building, then, I guess like I'd just say like jump in when you got questions. So obviously you mentioned like Lauka Vai, Mother of Nightmares, and she's part of the Avangori dynasty, which allows you to have the big monsters as battle line. And when you write an army in Age of Sigmar, if you're looking at, I guess because you're planning to go to an event, aren't you? Are you coming to FACEHAMMER GT? Was that the plan?
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So we're going to write a 2,000 point list. So because obviously
Let's
that's
do it.
what we're aiming to. And if you're playing that, and I don't know if you know, but this is kind of like an essential book you'll need, the General's Handbook. So it's not only got the rules, but it's also got the season of all the scenarios. It's a bit like chapter approved in 40k. I think it's probably exactly the same as chapter approved in 40k, if I got that right.
Yeah.
All the points, and also like they have these things called battle packs, which give you special missions. Now, this season is all about Gur, which is the realm of beasts, which is all about monsters. So doing a monster-focused army is a really good idea right now. One, I think it's quite good as well for new players because you have less to worry about. You have less models to move, and less war scrolls to remember. And there's still, but with the good thing about Soulblight over Feck is you've got more options and you've got more possibility to grow it into different armies with the models you start collecting with. So obviously brand new, so they're a bit more sexy. So I'd say starting with Soulblight is probably a good idea.
They're also very appropriately pointed, aren't they? Because they are such a recent release. Not only that, but I think there were 2 battle tomes that in the wash came out as being like 1 to 3% cheaper or something than they were previously, and it was Nurgle and Soulblight, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so Soulblight points that are in the back of the book are basically the same that they are in the General's Handbook. They didn't get adjusted because they were already pointed for free. So, you know, I don't know if you've got the battle tome, but this would be a good place to start. So Lauka Vai, she could be a general in addition to another general. So I guess the real question is you need to have 3 battle line, and your battle line can be Terrorgeists or zombie dragons. So I don't know whether you want which one you care about, or if you want to mix, or what, or if you want to have anything else as your battle line. Is there any other models that you particularly like?
Yeah, I have another question which might influence your answer, John. Do you have a preferred style on the table? Do you like to go over and hit people in combat? Do you like to have a little bit of everything? Do you like, would you like to be majority combat but have some small buffing or a little bit of shooting? How do you enjoy the game the most?
It kind of depends on the army in a way. Really, I think really my heart mainly lies in just beating stuff up in close combat. A lot of the stuff that I've done more recently for 40k has been ranged, but that's largely because a lot of the best stuff has been ranged, and a lot of the vehicles that I've really liked have had really fun options for that. So I've still stuck to that, but really the charging in and getting really up close and personal is the kind of thing I prefer to do. And I feel like if I'm going for an army that is full of like horrible monstrosities, I really want them to be eating people more than anything else. So
well, the good thing is they both kind of do that. The Terrorgeist gives you this like terror scream, which does mortal wounds. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're still good in combat, and their bite is particularly nasty. So if you roll a 6 to hit, they do mortal wounds, and mortal wounds are like, I guess they're in 40k as well right now. Yeah. So there's a bit of a key difference between AOS and 40k, whereas in 40k high damage weapons don't carry over. So a damage 2 weapon will kill a damage like a damage 1 guy, but it wouldn't kill 2 damage. Kill a guy with 1 wound, but it wouldn't kill 2 guys with 1 wound. In AOS, it cascades through. So damage 2 is just like a mortal wound in 40k, but they get a save. So high damage attacks do carry through to other models. So where you look at a profile like a zombie dragon and it's like damage 2 on its weapons, you're like, well, actually that it's not like 40k where it would just stop at a 1 wound model. It would carry all the way through. So they're both, to be honest, both of those models are very, very choppy in combat.
The also very swingy because you've got D6 damages, haven't you?
The dragon is definitely better in combat. I'd say that, but it loses the ability to do mortal wounds, so it's not as
or scream. You don't have many options for shooting. Period in undead. That is basically it, isn't it, Russ?
I was going to say that the one thing that I know vaguely is that, and this is almost entirely gained from playing the Total War games, in fairness, is that range just doesn't seem to be a thing for undead. It's just not. I've never seen models for things like archers or siege weapons or
No, they don't. I think the thing is with Terrorgeist and zombie dragons have a breath weapon. So basically, just in terms of stat wise, they're both movement 14. They've both got 14 wounds. They've both got a 4-up save. They're both bravery 10. So basically identical in that regard. The Terrorgeist is a 10-inch reach, 10-inch range shooting attack where you roll a dice and you add the number of the Death Shriek value as it goes down, and that allows you to do everything above their opponent's bravery does mortal wounds. So it's kind of good against low bravery troops. It can be quite powerful because it can almost like one-shot heroes or support weapons, particularly if you play against Skaven, things like that. Even against Sylvaneth, I think they're sort of bravery 6 or 7. So you're adding 6 if you're unhurt. And there's a command ability in the combat phase in the new pack where you can fight at the top of your profile. So in Age of Sigmar, as you get hurt, your monsters get worse. Generally, unless you're Scarbrand or a Squig, but generally you get worse. So Scarbrand gets angry and gets better. So it's like, but it's one of those things that there is a command ability that allows you to like fight at the top of your profile, so you can basically shrug off the damage. So Avangori have got access to a lot of cool monster benefits, which I'll talk about through, which is definitely where you want to be leaning with what you're doing.
So it's essentially the same as like degrading vehicle profiles in 40k then. So you start out on like the top one, and then as you get below a certain number of wounds, the effectiveness of the unit just drops slightly, and then it just keeps going down.
Exactly the same.
And their speed as well, which is and it drops off quite fast.
That's in a way that's quite helpful, because the two armies that I have used the most are Dreadnought Army, which has exactly that across all of them, and Chaos Knights have the same thing, and in fact so do the armored company that I'm building. Apparently I really like degrading like stat lines. I don't know why.
So essentially the Terrorgeist has ability on its, they both got a bite, exactly the same. The only difference is the Terrorgeist's bite, if you roll a 6 to hit, it does mortal wounds. So you skip the wound roll. It's just flat 6. Which I think it's flat 6 still. Yes, it's a flat 6 mortals. So that's quite a nice bypass. It's normally quite popular in Flesh Eaters because you get to re-roll the hit dice with a mount trait, but you don't get that in this book. But it's okay. But you've got a lot less attacks from your claws. You've only got 4, whereas the zombie dragon has 7. But essentially they're the same stat. So for me, like if you're more combat focused, you probably want to stick more to zombie dragons. They're slightly cheaper as well, but obviously a Terrorgeist is quite nice to have at least one, because the shooting on it is quite effective in different circumstances. It also has a cool rule that when it dies, everything within 3 takes mortal wounds as it dies, because it's full of all this like maggoty, horrible stuff that when it dies, it kind of explodes in a load of like necrotic, disgusting stuff that hurts.
I'd noticed that when I was looking at them. I can't remember, is that something that happens on a roll, or is it just happens when they die? That's it. It just explodes and everyone around it.
So
I really like that.
Blows up. So I personally quite like Terrorgeist because I like that ability. It does hurt you as well, which is a bit weird, but it is what it is. So I think that
also having 3, if something is weak against screams, having 3 can be potentially very powerful. You could have an extremely scary turn 1 for your opponent if let's say that they're elite Stormcast, bravery 7, expensive, you wound a piece troops. if you rocket up into their face and scream on them 3 times and just get, some slightly above average rolls, you could be doing a significant amount of damage before you even get in there. So, whether you want variety or you want to double down, I think both of them have strengths and weaknesses. If you want to 2 of one and 1 of the other, or 3 of the same one, because you like rotting explosions or whatever.
I mean, it feels like. Would it be fair to say that, like, in a way, the Terrorgeist has a little bit more of a gamble when it comes up close, but it's kind of outweighed by the fact that if the gamble goes well, you are guaranteed to do more, if that makes sense?
Probably the most swingy, I guess.
It's just like in combat, the Terrorgeist, either like you pop a couple 6s on the bite and you just do 12 flat mortals, or it does literally hardly anything because they get hit on 4s, basically.
I have 4 lower ceiling.
But the potential damage from a zombie dragon is higher because it's still got the free damage d6. Admittedly, you'd have to pop 6s on the wound roll, get through their armor and all that. But their claws are 2 damaged flat, and you get 7 of those as opposed to 4. They're the same speed. It's still got a breath weapon that's Ren free, which is good at shooting anyway. So for me, it's the toss up between do you want this or the other. I think in Avangori you get different mount traits depending on your mount, which I do have a Soulblight book.
I'm here.
So
command traits, monstrous might, artifacts, monstrous spoils.
I didn't want to prep too much for this because I kind of wanted to do it on the fly, because I wanted to show people the kind of the process. So you get these cursed mutations. Okay, so there's these 3. So when you pick an army, what they've done in the new edition, they call it enhancements. So you get to pick like an artifact, a triumph if you're lower points, one spell from each law you're allowed to take a spell from, a command trait, and then some of the formations unlock additional. And one of the things that Soulblight get, in addition to those enhancements, they get these cursed mutations. So when you take Avangori, you get access to those. It's called the Cursed Abomination rule. So it basically says if you've got a Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragon, and that's keyword bold. So what that means is a slight difference. So like when you've got a War Scroll and it's got a title, this will be backwards, but there you go, get the idea. So you've got Blood Knights. So you've got like a title. If I can get this in shot. So you've got a title here, and then you've got keywords down here. So if it's referring to a keyword, the keyword means that it might appear on multiple scrolls. So though there's a Terrorgeist scroll, there's also a Vampire Lord on Terrorgeist. It also has the keyword. So if you take a mounted vampire on a zombie dragon, you could still give him a curse mutation. So that's essentially what it means. So when you write lists, you put the models in, then you have all these little decisions to make about your enhancement spells, a bit like War Gear in a way, but you just don't pay for it. You just get it for free.
Right.
Because I think in 40k you have to buy your weapons and everything as well. In AOS you don't. Yes. You just buy the War Scroll and that's what you get, everything that's on it, and you pick what you want. Right. So it's a lot simpler. Actually, I find it a lot more easy to write lists in my head, because when I started, I looked at when I'm going to get the edition wrong. 9th edition, 40k is it in? Yeah, I didn't get it wrong. I was going to say 7th. I looked at getting into it, and I just got completely switched off, having to buy like individual pistols and hand grenades, and I just like, no.
I have to admit, it is something where I can't build lists in my head for 40k. I've never been great at list building as it is. I need like either pen and paper or like Battle Scribe or the app or whatever. But even things like just trying to remember points costs is just not a thing that exists in my brain for individual models.
You picked a good game and a good army then, because once you've got, you could have roughly the same people for the same points, and then there could be, a more aggressive version where you just change all the items and your points don't change whatsoever. Yeah. Or, you can have a core concept that you like, and then go, well, actually, I'm gonna prioritize things that are a bit more defensive or a bit more aggressive, or things that give me healing or anything like that. And you could take exactly the same list and you could have it play very differently without you having to relearn War Scrolls or anything like that, which is really lovely. It means you can. Everyone wants to be able to think about lists while they sit on the toilet, and it's much easier in Age of Sigmar.
This is true. Like, you know, I can't disagree with that. You know, it's definitely what we want to be doing, right? So it's it's a lot easier. So one of the things that I thought I would talk about is the we could talk about those things now. I'm just getting up on the screen, so I've got a bit multitasking.
Rest is multitasking or not?
Can you tell?
So
I'm just going through the different things. So let's go to the curse mutations. That's what we're talking about, right? So
yep,
there's 3 of them. One of them is called Maddening Hunger, which basically means at the start of the combat phase, you can pick an enemy model with a wounds characteristic of 1 that's within 3. If you do, that model is killed and you heal 1 wound allocated to the model. So you basically gobble up a model. Which
nice.
Sounds like okay, or you kill a model with 1 wound. But what's quite nice is you pick the model.
You pick it, yeah. And
that's quite powerful.
Right.
Normally what you do is you do damage to the enemy and they pick the model they take off.
Yeah.
But what this allows you to do is coherency in Age of Sigmar is inch of every model, 1 other model. Unless you've got more than 5, then you need 2 models within an inch. So it's quite easy to break coherency if people aren't careful. The other thing in AOS 3 is that champions can issue command abilities, which allows them things like to ignore the battle shock or to get bonus saves and things like that. So being able to kill the champion out of a unit allows you, because it's the start of the combat phase as well, it allows you to do that before they issue their command ability, like all out defense. So if they haven't got another hero nearby, you can go in, gobble the champion up, and then they can't issue a command ability. So it's quite a good one.
Right.
It's quite cool. It's like, you know,
yeah, I like that.
So you've also got the next one, which is Urges of Atrocity, which allows you to run and charge, which is also quite powerful.
Once again, yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite good because it gives you a lot more threat range on your model.
Yeah.
Then the next one is Null Blood Construct, which is to re-roll successful casting rolls for enemy wizards within 9, which is a little bit more techy, but it could be useful. I mean, I think with the changes in 3, Maddening Hunger's gone up in stock, and Urges Atrocity is good as a second one, but I wouldn't necessarily. I would probably take Maddening Hunger because it allows you to catch people out.
Yeah. Also, you might go 1 up your damage profile. You know, let's say you're just below the next bracket. You could go from having taken 4 wounds and having 2 less attacks and being 1 less to wound and 2 inches slower to just nibbling someone and being right up. And then you could nominate that model to go first and wipe out the unit and take no further damage anyway. So it's it's reliable too. You know, if it has 1 wound, you pick it and it's dead.
Yeah.
And
I like the sound of that.
So those are the abominations. So these are what we call battle traits. So when you pick a faction like Soulblight, there's a sub faction. So the Avangori, which makes your big monsters battle line, but also gives you these. So that's the abominations is the first one. The second one is you get -1 to wound rolls on melee attacks that target zombie dragons, terrorgeists, and vampire monsters. So that's basically Lauka Vai is the same as well. If you take another Vengorian Lord, if you take even like Neferata, because she's a vampire monster. She wouldn't have the Avangori word, ignore me, I just got that wrong, but there you go. So, but if you've got the Avangori and you're in there, so unless you're also a monster. So it's quite powerful. -1 to wound is a particularly nasty debuff because there's not many things that give you bonuses to wound rolls.
Right.
You just get that for free across all your monsters. So it's just added survivability. So obviously it doesn't affect shooting, but it affects melee attacks. So in combat, you're a bit more resilient.
Yeah.
You also get something called Unstoppable Nightmares, which is probably a rule that sings to you a little bit because it's you're all about the nightmares. And what this does, again, it's in the combat phase, you can pick one of your terrorgeists, zombie dragons, or vampire monster to fight at the top of its damage table, regardless of how many wounds it suffered. And you get to do that every combat phase, but you can't do it more than once on any of your monsters. So once you pick a monster, that's for the game. They can't do it again.
Yeah.
That's the same as the command ability. Now, the reason that's really good is because although you can use a command ability, that one costs a resource, which I think you have command points in 40k. I'm not sure. Yeah. But you cannot have more than one command ability assigned to a unit in a phase. So there are other abilities like all out attack gives you +1 to hit. You wouldn't be able to do both of them, but you could do unstoppable nightmares and +1
right to hit,
so it's not a command ability.
So it's like the same thing, but you can actually use it to stack them and get multiple benefits.
Whilst on 1 wound remaining, you could have some really damaging death throws as well, which is just always nice to go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
So
that sounds pretty spot on for the kind of thing that I like to do when it comes to. Yeah, that's just taking me back to old games of throwing massive monsters at stuff and just watching them munch everything around them.
We should be able to take that box.
It definitely works.
That sounds good.
So I think really one of the things we should talk about is, although you've got Lauka Vai, now she is a general for your army, but you can also have a second general because she counts in addition. So is there something, would you want like the normal Vengorian Lord, or do you think a vampire on zombie dragon fits what you want, or is there anything you're particularly like really keen on?
To admit, from just a modeling standpoint, I was kind of looking at options, and Vi and the Vengorian Lord are essentially the same, but with a different head and a slightly different pose. Yeah, and that kind of put me off a little bit. But then again, I did also think it'd be nice to have just a bit of variety, because I've made, it might be a completely incorrect assumption, but I'm assuming that the Vengorian Lord doesn't differ all that much from Vi herself, like that there isn't a massive gap between the two war scrolls.
Yes and no.
And so
because a Vengorian Lord, let me just get these up on the screen and talk about it. So
one's a named character and one isn't, which means that you can customize one, which is that's kind of a difference.
That's a difference, yes, for sure. Yeah. So like Lauka Vai can't have command traits or artifacts. The Vengorian Lord can. The other thing about the Vengorian Lord, so they've got essentially an identical profile in terms of damage and stats. The only difference is Luca's got 1 extra wound. But other than that, the stat line is the same. So if you look at the pure attack stat line, it's exactly the same. The difference is, so they've both got the same rule called Nightmare's Miasma, which is -1 rend if you're within 3. Okay. Now, where Lauka Vai comes in, she's got a rule that the other one doesn't have. So she's got the Champion of Avangori. So when she makes a charge, you could pick an enemy unit within 1 inch and roll a number of dice for the charge roll. Each 5+ they take a mortal wound. So when she crashes into a unit, she does damage. As the Vengorian Lord doesn't do that. They've both got the undeniable impulse rule, which you you have to roll a dice to control yourself. If you roll equal to or lower than the battle round, you go a bit crazy. So the longer the game goes on, the more likely you are to flip out. Which is quite cool. It gives you run and charge, but it stops you using command abilities.
Right.
Now, this is where they become different. Okay, so they both got the hunger. So vampires, when they kill stuff, they heal because they drink their blood, which is all cool. The difference is they're both wizards and they've both got a command ability, but they are different. So Lauka Vai gets a spell called Death's Downpour, which is on an 8, and it means that charge rolls by enemy units within 12 are halved. Now, that's particularly powerful because it's something you can like put up on yourself as like a bubble. And then as the enemy comes at you, if they're within 12 of her, and you in AOS, you have to be within 12 to make a charge. So she's the thing they want to get to. So if you imagine like you're 6 inches away, you'd need to roll a double 6 charge to get to her. So that's how powerful that is. It's pretty ridiculous. It's hard to cast it, but if you get it off, it's very strong. So it's a defensive ability. The other thing
Might be nice for protecting your monsters.
Yeah, because obviously, like, they might not want to charge her, but if she stood next to things they want to get to, they might still be within range, because the closer they get to your model, the more likely they are she's within 12. So most people want to stand 3 inches away and have a 3-inch charge. But if they're within 3, they're probably within 12 of a Lauka Vai, so they need a 6. But if they're 6 inches away, they still need a 6, but they're not within 12. So you kind of get that, like, exclusion zone. There are in Age of Sigmar as well. There you might hear people talk from drop from the sky or Alpha Strike armies, and it's a bit like Deep Strike. So you have stuff that just drops from the sky 9 away. Basically most stuff that appears is always 9 inches away. So that a lot of people play armies that they go first, they drop 9 away, they roll their charges. They go into you, like Byron uses Sigvold, for example, and he gets +3 to his charge, and he comes on from the table edge using his ability from Lurid Haze, and that can catch people out. So when you deploy, you kind of need to... People talk about screens, which we'll talk about in a little bit, where you have like a unit of chaffy stuff that's just there to be in the way, so they don't get to your meaty stuff. So we might talk about if there's a unit that you wouldn't mind slotting in to protect your monsters against that isn't a monster, but is technically something you need. If you know, from a competitive point of view, you don't have to. You can just go balls to the wall, but you know, it's it helps. The thing about
when your things are in 300-point chunks, sometimes you just can't fit one more monster in.
No, it takes something, right? So the good thing about like the spell as well, like the only thing limitation is if they go before you, you can't use it because you need a hero phase to cast it. It's not something on. So if you're going second, you're like, actually, I can't put that up if they're alpha striking you. At AOS 3, everyone's got access to a low drop battalion. In fact, your army will probably sit in that because of the way behemoths and stuff work, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But I think the first thing is to populate the list, and then we'll talk about formations and things, because it gets normally the thing you do at the end. So Death's Downpour, then you've got command abilities like Queen Among Monsters, so you can use this in your hero phase, and you can pick one enemy unit on the battlefield. So there's no range. You just go, I'm going to have that unit. And into your next hero phase, you get to add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by Soulblight Gravelord monsters that target that unit. So this is extremely powerful, because this is you're doing it in the hero phase, so you're not issuing to your unit, but you're doing it out of the combat phase. There's no range, and you're basically getting all-out attack on everything that hits that unit.
And everything in your army is going to be a monster,
pretty much.
Yeah. So if you manage to get the jump on someone, even if she is like on the other side of the board, you can just go, that unit is going to get it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But your opponent doesn't get to stop you either. Or there is like a negligible amount of niche ways in the game that you could potentially stop that. So very unlikely, and you're just like, well, I've spent my 1 point, we've done that, it's now easier for me to pummel that thing into the ground.
It's also really good if you go against an enemy like a Great and Clean one or something like this. It's like negatives to hit against it, because that will take the -1 away. But if you then use all-out attack as well, you're technically at +2 -1, so you're still net +1, so you're still at +1 to hit, which is the maximum you can get in Age of Sigmar. You can only have maximum +1 or -1, apart from saves, which can go more negative, but can never be more than +1. So it's quite nice, because if you can stack stuff to mitigate their debuffs, that's also good. So
it's a big deal if you have stuff that hits on 4s as well. You know, a lot of people playing with big monsters in the game, it's or like previous ogres or stuff like that, it's quite painful to hit on 4s because it's just so swingy. So any way to nudge those odds is a very, very big deal.
Yeah.
So we know we're taking Lauka, right? And we already knew that, so she's in anyway. So, but the reason the Vengorian Lord's different, okay, so he's got one spell called Clotted Deluge. Easy for me to say, not. So it's on a 6, so it's quite easy to cast, because casting's 2d6 roll. So anything below 7 is good. So you pick an enemy unit within 12, so it's quite short range, because that's obviously 12 for you, it's not that far away. But you get add 1 to wound rolls with melee weapons that target into your next hero phase. So that, again, if you've got Lauka for +1 to hit, and he gives you +1 to wound, you've still not spent.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting synergy there, and plus to wound. We already mentioned getting pluses to wound is very difficult, so it's a very strong spell.
Yeah.
If your opponent's turned up with a Death Star as well, because you're selecting them, you're not spending one per Terrorgeist for sake of example. 3 times, you're just picking that one and saying, I'm going to bully that. And whoever goes into it, if you do want to, send 3 Terrorgeists into it, you've only spent 1 resource rather than 3. So it really lets you bully something if you're, I don't know, if someone turned up with Archeon and you're like, right, I'm going for him, then you could go all out on that and it would have only cost you a small amount of resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although, admittedly, Archeon does have a shrug from spells, but anyway, if you get it off, it's good. Although I always tend to fail that when it matters, so it's fine. He's also got an interesting command ability. So again, the command abilities, you can only use it if you haven't lost control. So like Lauka's one, you can't use if she goes mad. So if you roll if early on the game, it's good. Later in the game, it's less likely to be able to use it. Which is why his one's a bit weird, because basically it says at the end of the combat phase, if any attacks made by a friendly Swordbite Gravelord unit, which should be anything in your army pretty much, destroyed an enemy unit, so that means got rid of the entire unit, you can heal D6 wounds allocated to that Swordbite Gravelord unit. The same unit cannot benefit from this command ability more than once per phase. So that allows you to essentially go, right, well, you get to heal D6 wounds. So if you've got a monster army and everything's got lots of wounds, that's quite powerful. It's
you could be doing that multiple times as well, depending who had killed it. You might have already drunk back some because you're a vampire and then added a second roll onto it. So like D3 plus D6.
Right. Okay.
And with AOS 3, you get heroic actions. So all characters can heal in both players' hero phase. You get to pick an action. So even if your opponents go, and you can go, right, I'll do heroic recovery. And the way it works is you roll 2d6 and you've got to roll under your bravery. Death is all bravery 10 across the board.
Yeah.
So as long as you roll lower than 10, you get D3 wounds. If you roll a 10, you get 1. If you roll 11 or 12, you get nothing. But I find heroic recovery is a really good heroic action to take.
Right.
So you're starting to see that although the game there's a lot of stuff to think about, like from the buffs and stuff. So I think the Vengorian Lord adds a lot because it gives you a caddy for artifact for a trait. I think the real question is, do you want a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon? Because then the Vengorian Lord becomes a question mark, but without that, you definitely need another hero. So it's either going to be him or the dragon or both.
Or Vordry or something?
The problem with Vordry, he's Castelli Dynasty, so you don't get the benefits of being Avangori. So I would stick away from Vordry. He's also a little bit overcosted, in my opinion. But I would say that.
So with the Vampire and Zombie Dragon, that I'm assuming it has all the same stuff as the Zombie Dragon does, but you've got the added benefit of a wizard, I think, isn't a Vampire Lord.
So
you get
a wizard
riding his attacks as well.
You also
and
get a better save on the dragon.
Yeah.
So the dragon goes up to having a 3-up save rather than a 4+, which in AOS 3 would actually go to a 2+, so it's a lot better. He also I would go with the Lance, and the Lance is damage 4 on the charge, so it's very impactful with its mighty 1-inch reach, but I won't start borrowing off.
It's the longest weapon in the game.
It's 3 inches long, but it's got a 1-inch reach, like physically 3 inches long. We joke about it a lot. So
it's because his dragon's really tall, so he can only poke a goblin in the eye.
But the dragon's mouth. So you have to get off the dragon to fight effectively. Then the lance kind of loses its stick, right? So so basically, it's exactly the same as a normal Terrorgeist. Normal Zombie Dragon, but you get a +1 save. You get a ability to heal D3 wounds if you kill something, and you get a wizard. It's a hero, can have artifacts, can have traits. So it's a lot better. I would always take the Death Lance, unless you're particularly wanting to model one with a sword if you don't want one. But I would recommend a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon with a lance.
Yeah.
I would say probably as a command trait caddy, and to maybe even the artifact.
He wears stuff quite nicely.
He does like his bling. But you could take a Vengorian as well. So you could take all 3. It will make your army fairly small, but it's entirely up to you. So
that'll be like heavier on I was going to say HQ units, but it's not. That's not the right name.
Extra heavy.
Yes.
Heroes.
Yeah.
Leaders. Yeah.
This is the one thing I'm still stuck in 40k like unit types, even though it's kind of, from the sounds of it, a lot of it is now roughly equivalent.
Yeah.
Which was not the case
No.
when I had my one singular game all those many years ago. But it sounds like a lot of it is roughly equivalent, but there's like detail changes amongst every part of it. So it's like the overall structure is kind of similar, and a lot of the terminology is now the same, but what a lot of the stuff means inside of that is different and works slightly differently.
Yeah, you've got like several key changes that distinguish the two different games very much, like the turn mechanic and stuff like that. But
I was just about to mention if you knew about the double turn. I guess you do, right?
I was going to say I have to admit I know of the double turn mechanic, which I wasn't familiar with until a few days ago, where I watched something that caught my eye because it was like a rejected battle report, where a dual turn came in and won. I forget
Just
who,
threw it all
who it was, but they were just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, so I concede. And it was like a 10-minute long video, and I was like, that seems very unlikely that it would be that bad. I don't know enough to call that, but I didn't know that was a thing that you could do. So
yeah, if you put all of your luck into an almost 50-50 chance, then you may well get punished for that.
Yeah.
But also, the game lets you do a lot more in your opponent's turn now. That's one of the most positive things about AOS 3, I'd say. So, you have the opportunity to go in, go crazy, kill a load of stuff, heal some wounds back, and then immediately when it's your opponent's go in their hero phase, be like, I'm actually going to heroic action and heal D3 wounds on this guy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's things like Rally where you can add models back into units. Not that you're going to have that because you don't have units, you have single models, but but you can, stuff like that. And also like you can react to their movement by moving D6 inches away. You can, if you go second, you get more command points. And in the beast pack, in the scenarios in turn, when it gets to round 3, if you go second, you get to remove one of the objectives, which is extremely powerful because it allows you to dictate the game. So like that's a key roll off, and sometimes you'll give what we call giving the turn up, where you win the roll for the choice and you give them the turn. Because you're like, actually, I'd rather take the objective off, because if you get the turn, you're going to screw me over. And I think a lot of the play in Age of Sigmar is around when it comes to that decision, have you made that decision difficult for your opponent and have you capitalized on it? So if you play super conservative, but you know that so if they go first and then you take your first turn and you don't play aggressive, and then they win the roll off for the turn, they'll just give you the turn because you didn't move into position to capitalize.
Yeah.
Whereas if you moved aggressively, that second turn, if you get 2 in a row, could be the end of the game. And then as a player, if you're going first, you need to set up like what I like to call layers of like an onion, where you set up these like fire breaks, where you say, right, well, these units you can't get to these until you kill those. That's going to take you a turn. If you get a second turn, I've got another fire break, or I've got another thing. How am I going to use my resources? And sometimes you look at the matchup and you go, well, actually, I need a double to win this, or I need to like just play like I'm going to get it, because if I don't get it, I'm going to lose anyway. So it's just you play balls out and just go, well, fuck it. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. And I think that comes with experience. But that's kind of why I like Age of Sigmar, because there's none of this like, what's your effective range? I'll just stay out of range. It's like, yeah, it's out of range for 1 turn, but what if I get 2?
Yeah.
Which adds a lot more to the game, in my opinion. That's why I like it. It's exciting. Some people hate it, but you just have to accept it.
It makes for good stories. You like a lot of roles really matter.
Yeah,
it's quite nice.
That's my main approach to playing any game of anything. Is it's like 99%. As long as this is enjoyable and fun and funny, I'm good. I'll do whatever will be the most fun to do. That's the thing that I tend to aim for, which is probably why.
Yeah, it is. You got a sweet army for it as well. Like, you're going to have plenty of stories where some like 3 things really matter, and if they go right, you're going to have such a chompy turn, and if they go wrong, you're going to really be on the back foot.
Yeah.
So we've got we're gonna go through Vampire Lord. Okay, I'll stick a Vengorian Lord in for now, and you might say I want more stuff, and he might have to go, right? So at the moment we got Lauka Vai, a Vampire Lord, a Vengorian Lord. Now we've got to have 3 battle line, which essentially are going to be 3 flappy things. Now I don't know how you feel about zombie dragons and terrorgeist. I would probably recommend running 1 of each, just so you get to try it out, because they're not that dissimilar. And you get to go, well, you might prefer, after you've had some games, you might fall in love with zombie dragons, or you might fall in love with terrorgeist, and then you go, I just want 3 of them. But then until then, it's like, points wise, you're saving 10 points taking a zombie dragon. So I think they're probably a slightly better choice because the 10-point saving.
Yeah.
It's whichever one you like the idea of the most. I don't know if you have a preference.
I have to admit, it's one of those situations where they both just sound fun.
Yeah.
They both sound fun, and they were like, I think also with the stats being the same, but the attacks being different, I think you're right, it's going to come down to playing games and then kind of going off that, because I can easily see why you would take either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe
come down
doing
to your first game. If you roll 6s on the bites on your terrorgeist, you're going to be like, "That's it, I want them."
Yeah, that's
Then the next game they don't roll 6s, so you're like, "Oh, they're rubbish." So whether you can handle that emotional roller coaster like that, but maybe that's fun, right? So, so at the moment you've got Lauka Vai, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, a Vengorian Lord, a Terrorgeist, 2 Zombie Dragons, and we're at 1,895 points. So you've only got 105 points left. We don't have a screen. We don't have any other characters.
So there's 3 zombie dragons in there and 1 terrorgeist with the ridden character zombie dragon.
Yeah. So you've got 4 big monsters and 2 little monsters at the moment. Although I know that Lauka wouldn't want to be called little, but she's little in comparison. So I wouldn't say it to her face. It's fine. So
we're only allowed 4 behemoths at this points value as well. So we are at that cap.
Oh, I've got 5.
Right.
Well, the thing is, we're not.
Okay.
Because the Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragons are battle line, they don't count. So you've only got 3 actually.
Do what you want then.
Because otherwise we would have had 6. So yeah, most armies you can't have more than. So we can't afford another monster. I'm sorry. That's the bad news. You could you upgrade the Vengo Lord? No, you don't have enough points. So
I mean, John, do you like the idea of having? Do you want everything to be massive, or do you like the idea of having some little swarms of bats or some dogs running around or anything like that? Something bestial, or do you just want the big choppy dudes?
I think probably, really, I should have something that can at least, like, even if all they do is just stand in the way of the big chompy guys for long enough. Like, probably, it feels like dropping something big in favor of having a little bit more, I don't know, like a little bit more control of things. Probably sounds like it might be a good idea.
What do you like the idea of building and converting and painting out of the generic cliche undead options? Do you like?
When I was looking through, I like the look of the new Death Rattle skeletons, but I also acknowledge straight away that I will not paint 20 of those in anything less than about a month, because I'll get to the point where I get to like little detail bits and be like, I'm losing the will to to do this for kind of something that I like the look of, but I also know I could get through pretty easily. The direwolves stand out pretty heavily just because I look at those and it's either fur, which I can get a decent fur effect in, like I'm saying that like I've got the biggest like painter's head ever, like it's like a massive ego trip, but I know from experience that I could probably knock out all the fur on like a box of wolves in like an hour or something, to a decent standard, and then do the rest after. I know I could do that, and I could still do stuff with them given the size of them, that I was planning to do with the larger monsters, just on a smaller scale, so I can still customize them to some extent.
So
So
it's quite forgiving for conversion work as well, isn't it? Because it's kind of it's less. You're not going to be trying to make something grow out of a skeleton's armor or something like that. It's an organic thing. Yeah.
The other thing I might recommend, like I know that you've bought the Rat Prince. I think yeah. Is there like a little hero that you particularly in love with that you'd like to use?
I have to admit, I really like him. There's also the there's half a dozen things out of the
Radakar the Beast, the guy who's like the bestial guy, the sort of the big wolfy dude. Is he something that
I really like the look of him. I have to admit, there's so many nice things in the Cursed City box, but you can't take. I know that you can't take those unless they're all in one big lump, can you?
Yeah, that's right.
Like it's just one.
It's a 600-point lump as well, I believe, or somewhere.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
There and thereabouts.
Are they at least like the best thing in the game for that cost? Or
well, you get a lot of them. You get a lot of them, but they're all.
Yeah.
I think if
populates
you're
quite a lot of your list with all right stuff.
they kind of fit into Vikros Dynasty, because you're in Avangori, they don't really fit what you're doing. The interesting thing about Radagard the Beast is that he has this thing that if he's charged, he could pop a command ability, and you get to add 1 to the attacks of all Soulblight Gravelord units wholly within 18, and that would be all your units. But he also gives you a unit of 10 direwolves for free. So he's a little bit pricey at 300 points, but he's a good option.
Do some swapsies.
To put in. He's not a monster, and he doesn't get the Avangori benefits, but in your army,
seems like
he's
one
probably
more
one of the
bite,
only
one more
ways
claws,
exactly.
one more swords. You've got a small amount of high quality attacks, so getting 1 extra to each of those is worth so much more than it would be on.
Yeah,
he can also
skeletons.
Run and charge, and he's got a movement of 8. He's got 12 wounds, 4 up save, so he's got -1 to hit him for shooting at him. And also in combat. And he does mortal wounds on 6s to hit, and he's got 6 attacks, and he's got 2 little vampires with him that have got 6 attacks between them. So I think he's quite a good choice.
Yeah, he's quite damagey, isn't he?
Yeah, he's pretty good. I mean, like,
so it's. Even though he's a different like dynasty from the others, the ability that he's got still just affects anything that is Soulblight Gravelords without being restricted to the one that he's part of.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's also really, it's very unrestricted, both in its selection and its range, because wholly within 18 is basically the board.
Yeah.
If you've gone balls to the wall, rod it up, and you're in front of your opponent's army, that is going to be every single thing you have apart from maybe 10 dogs. If you are being super aggressive, and that's scary. Like adding any more of those Terrorgeist bites or zombie dragon claws or anything, or vampire lord attacks, sat on top of it, or Lauka Vai. That's a big buff to basically your entire army for 1 CP, which is a bargain.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
He is 315 points, so I'd say you probably have to drop the Vengo Lord for him. But I think he adds more than the Vengorian Lord does.
Yeah. Would that take it? I'm just trying to quickly math in my head. Would that take it to like 1940?
So if we take
roughly,
if I go back to what I had, I know you can't see this, which is annoying, but it's 1930. You're close. So with dropping the Vengo out and putting Radagard in, 2 zombie dragons, Terrorgeist, what he gives you the benefit of, he allows you to summon a unit of direwolves to the table.
Yeah.
It does cost a command ability, and you have to do it at the end of your movement phase, so it doesn't help you with a screen.
Right.
So if it was me, I would probably drop one of the battle line monsters, so you got 1 of each. And I know it sounds like you're hero heavy here, but it is the nature of the beast. And I think I would probably put in a unit of direwolves, which are battle line.
Yeah.
To start. That gives you 230 points left. I'm trying to think if there's anything that you're particularly lacking of. The only thing, so there's a couple of things you could do. Okay, so I'm going to chuck a couple ideas at you. So I don't know how you feel about the Mortis engine, like the model.
I knew you were going to say that. It's 200 points. Russ loves it. It's very cool as well as far as conversion opportunities go.
It's an option. Like, you don't have to take it. It's just something I like, and the reason I like it.
It's that.
Yeah. It's basically got an AoE like area of effect like a whale, which is like a shooting attack, but it hits everything within range. And on a 4+, they take D3 mortals. So it's quite a nice thing to sort of hover around. It's also quite fast. It moves the same speed as your units. Now, what you can do with this, if you imagine you get like your pie plate of your monster, and next to it you put your oval, that essentially limits the attacks that can get to your monster.
Right.
Because they can't fit. So it almost gives you a buffer to say, well, actually, there's a bit of board space.
Okay.
You can't actually put models in. And because it's quick, it allows you to keep up. And that's why I think Fellbats are another option, which I'll talk in a minute. But what this also does, it gives you a +1 to casting for wizards within 12. So your spells, like Lauka Vai spell is on an 8, which is quite tricky to cast. But +1 might help. I don't think it's a good use of points in your army, but if you particularly like, I really like that model, then like it's something you could definitely take. It might be something you're like, well, that doesn't really fit with what I want to do, which is completely cool. I don't think it's a great choice, but it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah.
You can do something which might be a little bit more in your wheelhouse, and that's a corpse cart. So these are only like 80 points, and they can give you +1 to cast, or you can get one that's a -1 to wound bubble within 9. So if the enemy's within 9 of it, they're -1 to wound.
Right.
It's obviously like a freaky little wagon pulled by zombies with a load of dead bodies in it. So I think that's.
I actually have one down next to me.
So,
is it missing, John? Is it missing its spikes because you've used
it? Is, yeah. It's missing the spikes. Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah. So, corpse cart is a very good option. It's very slow, but it's good protection in the first turn if you were using it for the 9-inch -1 to wound. The other thing is quite good for +1 to save on Deadwalker zombies, but you don't have any. But if you've got two choices. One gives you +1 to cast, the other one gives the enemy -1 to wound and -1 to cast within 18. Right. I prefer the wound one generally because I like to give my opponent issues if they want to come at me. But it depends how important your magic is. I don't think your magic is that important that you need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it's just an option.
Cheap one as well.
Sorry?
Cheap one as well.
Yeah, 80 points for a corpse cart. So,
although that might mean that you have to paint more models, John. So, you know.
It's true.
swings and roundabouts.
And the other thing I'll talk about is Fellbats. Now, the reason I like Fellbats is they are fast, they fly, and they are summonable. So in your army, you get these grave sites, and units get like a death save, or they can heal from, or you can bring units back. You can't bring Fellbats back, but what they are quite good at is in AOS 3, there's a command ability called Unleash Hell, which allows a missile unit to shoot at something as a reaction when they charge. It don't have to charge the missile unit. You just have to be within 9 of them. So you could charge something else and they could shoot at you. But they can't do it if there's an enemy within 3. And also, if you charge them, they can shoot you as the charging enemy, but they can't shoot something else. So the way Fellbats work really nicely is you can charge them into their missile troops first. So they either don't shoot you, but then they've got an enemy within 3 and they can't shoot your big dragon when it goes into something else, or them. Or they shoot the Fellbats, probably kill them, but they waste their Unleash Hell and they can't do it more than once in a phase.
They spend a command point, so, you know, getting that out of anyone at any point is just great.
So what they are doing is basically and also because there's 3 bases and on 50 mil bases, if you've got your big monster, your Fellbats can form like a little buffer around the monster that stops people getting near it. So I really like them in Avangori. I think they're very strong. They're only 75 points for free, and their models are quite easy to paint and assemble. They're only like 4 or 5 pieces, and like
Bluff and
bit of airbrush and bit of dry
it.
brushing. You're there really.
Yeah.
I mean, you could literally just stipple the wings, like dry brush the middle of the body up brown over a black undercoat, and do a little bit of highlights and pick out the teeth and eyes and stuff, and you're done basically.
Yeah.
So they're really easy. So you could take those. That'll bring you up to like 1920. If you had 2 freezer Fellbats. If you took the more extension, you get to 1970. If you took a corpse cart, so you could add on top of that, you could add a corpse cart as well. So you could go for like a corpse cart, 10 Fellbats, 2 units of 3 Fellbats, direwolves, a Terrorgeister zombie dragon, Radagar the Beast, a Vampire zombie dragon, and Lauka Vai, and that's 2,000 points on the nose.
That sounds pretty good.
That'll give you like 3 zombie dragon-esque size things, Lauka, Radagar the Beast, 10 direwolves, 2 units of Fellbats, and a cart, and then you can summon another 10 direwolves.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So that gives you a nice mix. And then what you can do...
Quite a cute army.
Yeah.
Lots of different heights on display, bit of variety, plenty of scope for you to do whatever you want with. Is that too many to paint? Or do you reckon that's...
I reckon... So, 2 units of direwolves would be... I think that'll be all right. I think that'll be
The
okay.
only thing there's lots of is the fastest thing to paint in the entire book.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad one to go for. And they're quite quick as well. And they're not bad on the charge.
So I've just pasted it into the chat so you can see it, because I know you can't see my screen, so you can see like what it looks like. That hasn't got all the artifacts and stuff, but to be honest, like what you could do if you're struggling with if you're getting close to the event, you're like, I'm really struggling with my paint time, you could do stuff like drop the corpse cart and then add in 3 more Fellbats, which will be a lot easier, or you could put in an endless spell or something, but you can play around with that. I don't think it's worth getting too complicated with casting and stuff, because I think you don't really have a strong magic phase, so it's not. I don't think it's where you want to be leaning. But I think once you've played a few games and you'll start to see other stuff, it should give you the chance to then like, oh, actually, I really want to use this, or I really struggle against certain things, or I'm really having an issue with this. But I think like when you write an Avangori list, it's really easy just to put like all monsters in and then realize that you just don't have enough bodies to capture objectives, and you don't have enough screens or things to get in the way. And why Radukar the Beast is so good is because he's a cool model anyway, but he gives you that ability to buff your monsters with attacks, and they've got 3 or 4 profiles, which means you just profit so much more from that because it affects all of them. So it spikes your damage potential massively. You've also got quite a bit of shooting in this army, because you've got...
Yeah, it's kind of sneaky.
Yeah, because you've got like basically 2 zombie dragon breaths and a Terrorgeist howl. So that's enough. If you concentrated that, you could probably drag a hero down or wipe a screen out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite cool. I like that. I think that's a good starting point. And more importantly, you like it, which is the main thing, right? So
yeah, no, that sounds good. The temptation for me is always to just go for the biggest thing, and then not usually consider really how like utterly useless that might turn out to be. But I also have repeatedly done the like just the biggest thing or the rough equivalents in 40k. So doing something
by this model, and how many can you get?
Yeah, like doing something a bit different and actually having more variety and more, just more in the way of flexibility than, say, for instance, buying 4,000 points of dreadnoughts. It's like it's a totally different approach to what I have not got into the habit of doing necessarily, because I've built plenty of stuff. But it's an easy thing to default to. It's like, I know I can do this and I know I enjoy this, so I'll just do that. Whereas sometimes you're like breaking off and trying something a bit less kind of, I don't know, formulaic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're playing a new game, so why not? You're also, I think this list is quite nice for the characters have more complex profiles, and the other stuff is just kind of is what it is. So as long as you don't forget to shoot with your Terrorgeist, you're probably going to you'll then get it into combat and you read what it says and it does what it says. So your characters, you can even have a cheat sheet which we could help you with, where you're like, it's my hero phase. Like at this point, I have to do this. When I charge, don't forget this. You'll be able to go through something, and then your decisions will be compacted to probably the heroes and where you spend that type of stuff. At the same time, you're getting to participate in every phase of the game, even with vampires, which don't normally have shooting. So even though there's a bit, you still get to get it in. It's not overly complex.
I mean, I still use a cheat sheet for 40k. So
well, it's something that I'll knock one up for you. Because something I do for patrons at the top tier is I make called the list lab, where I make a list and I write a cheat sheet and I give people advice, and they come back every month. So I'll do that for you off the list we craft in this show. So I can do that for you. So you'll have it.
That'd be really good. Thank you.
AOS Coach, who's quite a friend of the show and sort of does has a big channel himself. He's got a cheat sheet on his Discord, which has just got the generic command abilities and everything, which is really good. So I will share that with you as well. But if people watching don't know, I'll put a link in the description because it's really handy.
I mean, even the GHB comes with a cheat sheet of a type on the very back page of it these days. So it's a good idea for sure.
I remember when I went to the ETC and I hadn't played with Sinesh really. I had like one game, and I had a little laminated sheet on what to do with my Sinesh army. And I'm playing at like the sort of the World Championships, and I was getting some weird looks. And I was like, I know this is weird, but I literally haven't played with this army, and it's really important I don't mess this up. So
just whatever helps play and keep it fun and not kind of. That's the main reason I have, like, whenever I've gone for a game of 40k at like Warhammer World and stuff, I take my iPad because I've got everything for whatever army I'm taking broken down, of all the different weapon profiles, like all the different unit profiles and weapon profiles are on separate pages, and it's just all there. Because after being there for like 4 or 5 hours, start to get a bit tired, you get a bit frazzled, and you forget things, and it's a lot easier to just be like, what was I doing? Oh, that's what I was doing. It's literally works way better.
Dry wipe marker and laminated, there's nothing wrong with that at all, because if there's a box there that wasn't ticked or crossed, then you're still in your hero phase. Oh, I don't need to do that, never mind, or shit, that was potentially really important for me.
I'd be remiss if I don't mention it, but a good friend of ours from Pro Painted does really helpful markers. So what I'll do is I'll get a set sorted out for you, so you get those as well. So you'll be you'll be able
sure we can
to use those.
Get you some either like shiny blood red ones or very pink ones or something. I got rose gold ones for my my Header Knights.
Because you're special.
Perfect. Yeah, I am very special.
So
there's sorry, just whilst I think, because there was just something mentioned earlier about the gravesite markers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are those just like cardboard bits that you get in the various boxes, or is that something that needs to be modelled?
You can model them.
Base size, isn't it?
It's not. It's a point. So in iOS, everything's like, even objectives are a point.
Right.
So you could use a marker like a coin. You could use like some people do custom ones like a perspex disc. So like Matt does, like you actually have a little perspex acrylic gravesite marker. I use a base with skulls over it. So I've got a base that matches my army. And basically, it's a base that was going to have a model on it. I didn't put a model on it. I just covered it in skulls, and that's my gravesite marker. Because I'm lazy.
Pop a gravestone on it or anything.
Citadel skull box, that sort of thing. And to be honest, as long as you measure to a point on that base, so if you say I measure to that skull or I measure to that middle of the base or whatever, that's clear. So you don't have to model it. It's quite nice to not have anything too big, because obviously you might want to stand on top of it, because it's just a marker. It's not because it's underneath the ground, right? So you can in your army, what you want to be doing with grave sites. So what they do is they give you your Deathless Minion save, which is a 6-up ward, which is a bit like what was it in 40k? Is it
Invulnerable save.
Invulnerable, that's what I was looking for. And that allows you to shrug damage after your armor save. So you get both. Just a bit like Feel No Pain. Have I got that right? Is that a 4-up ignore? Yeah. So it works a bit like that. So it's after damage is multiplied out. So if someone hits you with like a damage-free attack and you fail the save, you would roll 3 Deathless Minion saves.
Yeah.
And on a 6, you ignore it. So your characters project it anyway, but your grave sites also project it. The other thing they do, they allow you to set units up in the graves. So things like the fell bats and the direwolves can start off the table. And what you can do is you can, in your first turn, they can pop out of the ground. Basically, they climb out of the graves, or they get fly down from the sky, whichever thematic thing you want to use. And it also allows you to recycle the direwolves. So when the direwolves die, at the end of your turn, you roll a dice. On a 5+, you could take a summonable unit that died and put half the models back on the table, wholly within 9 on the grave site. Wholly within 12, I think, 9 away from the enemy. So they become like a respawn point for your direwolves, but they're also a bubble for your save on your monsters. So you'd probably, normally what I do is I do like a diamond. So I end up with like 2 right in the middle around the objectives, 1 bit further forward for aggression, and 1 at the back for a spawn point, and maybe sort of an offset diamond, so it's sort of like a triangle. 2 have to be inside your starting territory. So when you have a map, there'll be like an area that says that's your area. 2 have to be in there. 2 other 2 can be anywhere you want. So you can put them in your deployment zone if you want to. So you can really mess with people. But it's generally good to have them around where you're going to be fighting, or around where you want stuff to come back. Obviously, if your opponent stands near them, that stops you bringing units back because you can't fit them on the table. So, yeah, I sort of remiss not mentioning how they work. So they're in the core allegiances. So we've got some other choices to make. Okay, so we've got, just to get through the list, so we've got the fundamentals of it, and we're like, okay, so we've got the command traits. So you get a choice of 3 from Avangori, and your general will have this, which will be the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. Okay, so you can go, you've got Eye for an Eye, which is if you get wounded or any mortal wounds against you in combat, then you get to add 1 to the damage of all the melee weapons, including the mount. So what it means is if you're going second and they hit you, you get angry. It's quite a nice deterrent, but it does require you to get hit first. So if you're going like running and charging, it's probably not going to come up that often.
And you might go down a slot in your table as well, in which case you might end up exactly the same, if you let them go first in order to get this.
But you could always use your Avangori ability to bump you up for that turn, and then heal at the end because you drink your blood when you kill something. So it swings and roundabouts. The other one is Torment-Driven Throws. So start of the combat phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy within 3. On a 5+, they take a mortal wound and can only attack if the general has attacked. So if you're charging multiple things, what you could do is shove your general into a couple units. If they take that damage, you can activate somewhere else, and they can't fight him back until you fought with him. So you're going to go hurt. It's kind of the opposite. I don't really rate it because I think you've got enough wounds to absorb a hit, and you can fight at the top of your profile anyway. So, but it's okay. It's a bit techie as well, so it's probably not great. The third one is kind of simplistic. It's just reroll charge rolls. So you just get to reroll charge roll for free. So, which is quite nice.
Yeah, because you would, if you wanted to reroll the charge roll, it would cost you a command point in this edition. Also, let's say you had 2 units and one of them was this one. It failed its charge roll. That means you can reroll his for free, and then somewhere else on the board, if you have another fail, you can spend a command point and get both of them in. And this is something that I got caught out with quite a few times in my first couple of games. Like, well, he failed, I'll reroll that. He's failed. Oh, crap. He just left, standing there 7 inches from your opponent, about to die in the next turn.
Yeah.
You also get a choice of generic ones. So you can, one of them is to reroll run rolls and charge rolls. So you probably take that over that one, which is called Battle Lust.
So the thing of having 2 similar abilities, but one is just flat out better than the other, is also a thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You've also got Skilled Leader. So on a 5+, you get a command point at the start of your hero phase. So that can give you a little bit extra resource.
Yep.
You're not going to care about reroll enchanting because you're not a priest. You get +1 wound. And then Master of Magic, once per phase, you can reroll 1 cast, 1 dispel, or 1 unbind, which could be quite useful if you're particularly into your magic, but it's only that model.
Right.
for this general. So you wouldn't be able to use it on like Lauka Vai's spell, and the vampire lore is particularly crap. Just to warn you, there's basically one spell you're going to put on him, and that's going to be amethystine pinions to get extra movement.
Right.
So I would say you're really looking
nice and easy though.
Eye for an eye.
Yeah,
or
just one to remember.
Battle Lust. Now the reason Battle Lust might be good if you take the mutation which allows you to run and charge.
Oh yeah.
And you get to reroll both the run and the charge. That could be your alpha strike on him would be particularly fearsome.
It'd be a long way on average, like a really, really long way.
Yeah.
So
14 plus 4 plus 4 plus... Yeah, it's a long way.
It's a lot. Yeah. So you could basically go 20 with him and then charge 2d6 if you really wanted to.
Nice.
Fairly quick.
Yeah.
Especially on a smaller board now. We caught up with you guys. We've got a smaller board these days, so... You'll be starting 18, like in theory you could be starting 18 inches from your opponent if you're both on the front line, so 20 inches and then a charge will do it quite nicely.
So I would say I like eye for an eye because it just makes your opponent go, do I want to hit you? But I think it's entirely up to you. If you fancy the aggro, then we can go with that. So it's entirely your choice.
I have to admit, I'm usually a fan of the aggro, to be honest.
We'll go with that then. We'll go with Battle Lust. So, you could change these to fit. Once you played a couple games, you might go, that doesn't quite work for me. Let's change that. So, got the Death Lance. We'll give you, just going to put amethystine pinions on him because it basically gives you extra movement. So you cast it and he gets faster. So he gets another 6 inches. So if you cast pinions, you'd be 14 inches plus 6 inches flat plus another 6 inches for your run. So you're up to 26 inches plus a 2d6 charge.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much go where you want. So I just think out of all the spells, they're not really worth taking. That's the best one.
Also, John, if you add to your move instead of running and charging, it means you can move a long way and still be eligible to shoot because you can't shoot if you've run. So it's just nice to have that as an option.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I will just make that decision for you. So
there's 5 disappointing spells we could talk about, but they are disappointing.
We do have to pick a disappointing spell, but I think what we could also do is take one from the universal spell lore.
Flaming sword.
Well, interestingly enough, I saw some chatter about Flaming Sword. So what Flaming Sword does, it gives you... she's unique, so I don't think she could take it anyway, actually, thinking about it. So ignore me. We're not going to talk about that. But I think Arcane Bolt is better than Flaming Sword net on damage because the way it works now. I think it was someone in the Discord did a lot of maths, and I just took the benefits and take it as my own. So yeah, I'll just say it like it's my insight, right? That's how it works.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just claimed it. It's mine. I should probably credit the person, shouldn't I? That's really horrible doing that.
We'll find him in a sec. I think it's on
Alapala, I think it was who mentioned it. So
thank you, dude. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyway, she can't have it because she's unique. So ignore what I just was saying. So she's got to take from Lord of the Vampires, and
so she's got to take a NAF spell and an OK spell.
Her spell, you're going to be casting her spell, right? Generally. Now, I think Byron's just basically stole my thunder of what I was going to say. But, you could say it. You might as well just take pinions on her because there might be a time that you want to get in range, and all the other spells do a mortal wound or roll some dice and all this. It's it's all great, but actually what I'd rather do is just get in your face.
You just get there. Because it doesn't matter how cute you were if you don't get into combat, and that was your intent. So doubling down on that makes a lot of sense.
You can only cast it once. So if you cast it with the dragon, she can't cast it. But you've got her spell. She's probably going to be casting her spell every time. Or you're going to be you want to put Mystic Shield on. So even with the dragon, I'm probably putting Mystic Shield on. You don't need the core spells. You're not really going to be casting them. It's unfortunate that Radukar isn't a wizard. So that's why the difference. If you took the Vengorian Lord as a swap, that might be a good change. So when you've played with Radukar a few games, you might say, well, actually, I'd rather have a Vengo Lord. It gives me an extra spell. Maybe I could do an endless spell instead. because you've got a slightly more magic focused army, and then you could change the artifacts to like reroll casts and stuff like that. So you can lean into the magic aspect. So what's quite nice about the flexibility of the artifacts and what you do is you can make the army play very differently with a few changes.
Yeah,
So
you change 300 points and play a completely different game.
You're not limiting. It's not like it will play the same all the time. So these little choices, although they look insignificant, actually make quite a difference to how you play the game. He also gets an artifact, he doesn't. He's the only person you can have an artifact in your army, actually, because he's the only non-unique character. So looking at it, so that's the other reason for a Vengo Lord, because if you took him and you took it depends. You can't take Warlord formation, but if you could unlock an extra enhancement, you could take an artifact, you could stick it on him, you could, so on and so forth. So artifact wise, you've got Breath of the Void more. So once per battle in your hero phase, pick an enemy unit within 6. On a 3+, they take D6 mortal wounds. So it's quite a nasty breath that you can do.
Yeah. Bit of a delayed onset though, because you can't do it if you're not next to anyone. Or
no.
Yeah.
But it's 6 inches, so it's slightly better than within 3. So it's okay. It's I wouldn't say it's one that I would definitely go. It's your hero phase, so you can't do it in your opponent's as well. You've got Gorvar's collar. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can say that you'll don the collar, reroll wound rolls of 1. That is particularly good. For just consistency. Then you have the Furious Crown, which I guess probably appeals to you more. So you can basically, once per battle, at the start of the charge phase, then you can basically unleash the Fury of the Crown. So after you charge, pick an enemy unit within 1, roll a number of dice equal to the charge move. For each 5 up, they take a mortal wound. So that's the same rule that Lauka Vai's got.
Right.
But it does say equal to the charge roll for that charge move. It doesn't say unmodified. But I don't think you got any bonuses to charge, but I was just curious. Yeah. But so it does some impact damage. So that could be quite useful.
Yeah. Gives you an option to wipe out screens or, pick off a couple of units, a couple of models left in a unit or something like that.
However, they're not very... I'd say, although saying they're okay, they're all a bit... Meh, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the generic one... I'll just skip to it. You've got the... this Amulet of Destiny, which gives you a 5-up ward save. It's just net result gives you a third extra wounds. It's just better, right?
Yeah. So you've got 14 very important wounds in your army. Saving 1 in 3 that get through after your saves and all of that stuff is just, even if you already have a 6-up save, it's just better to have a 5-up save.
Yeah.
The other thing you could do is you could make him cast an extra spell, but the law is crap anyway. You don't need to re-roll the heroic recovery rolls. I'm not sure the +1 to wound on his weapon is that useful. It's okay, but I would literally just go straight with
keep him alive.
Yeah, keep him alive. Do more damage.
I always go. I pretty much any time there's an option to gain an invulnerable save, I'm just all over it every time, because just keeping them on the table feels just more reliable overall than anything else.
When you've got a quarter of your points in one model, it's a pretty sensible investment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
we are do his thing on the deal.
We are going all in on this guy, so it's not on the War Scroll builder, but we'll just have to put up with that for the moment. So he will have the run and charge and as well. So he's got the curse mutation that you can have. So he's got everything on him. That's the list. The only thing left to do is to put it into formations from the core book. So what I would say is we will look at the way these work, these core battalions, and choose. So
it'll be pretty familiar to John because we stole this from 40k, I believe. This concept, so should be an easy one.
We would hope so. I just need to get it up on the screen.
So there's a few of them available. There's one very standard one, and then each of them infers one or two extra, niceties below, which could be unlocking an extra enhancement, which could be an artifact, or having another spell, or something like that. Or maybe you get a free command point at the start of one hero phase in your game. That's very, very useful. Or you could push super aggressive and try and get as much as possible in a one-drop formation, and your plan could just be to take first turn or give it to your opponent and then run into their face and hit them as hard as possible.
Well, you're very limited what you can do, because basically a lot of the formation, the way it works, I don't know if you've seen it before with the icons. You have like the guy on the little Dracoff as the leader, which is just any leader, but the sub commander is a leader with 10 wounds or less. Now, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, all your models have more than 10 wounds.
Yeah.
So you don't get to use those. The other thing is your monsters that are battle line also lose the Behemoth keyword, so you can't take the monster formations. So you're basically limited to...
That feels like a weird kind of...
Yeah.
Maybe not oversight, but it seems unusual that it would be a case of, like, you've taken all monsters, and because you're able to take all monsters, they're no longer monsters for the purpose of this specific... Yeah,
it's a bit weird. I
interesting.
think it's an unusual because you gain the ability to have more than 4. Because that icon is Behemoth that is not a leader. If it was leader Behemoth, you'd be loving it because you've got loads of those. But the actual core stuff, it is a bit strange. Yeah, I must admit, it is a bit weird. You can't take Vanguard because you don't have a sub commander. That's why something like putting in crits to the Rat's Prince might help you, because you would unlock that formation. So really, the only formation you can actually take is the Battle Regiment 1-drop, which isn't a bad thing. And the other one you can take is Hunters the Halfland, which is one in the handbook. So the Battle Regiment is a leader, a big one. So you've for mandatory, so one of them. 2 units mandatory, anything else, and then there is a slot for either or. So it's a maximum of 5 units. So if we look at your army list, I believe you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. And 3 big leaders. So what I would suggest is to stick in the Hunters of the Halfland battalion your Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon, because they're just units now, which is a bonus you get. Other monsters can't do this, which makes them immune to Monstrous Rampage.
Right.
What that means is you can rampage against other monsters to get like +1, but get bonuses like +1 to wound, I think it is, or something like that. And but they can't actually rampage back at you, which makes it quite good.
It is quite a big swing, actually. Yeah.
And then everything else would go in the 1-drop except for your 2 other heroes. So you would end up being a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5-drop army. And that's all the benefits you'd be able to get, unfortunately. So again, once you've played a few games and you start thinking, I really want Vanguard to be able to make my run a 6 for free, or a reroll of a charge, then slotting in a hero, which then you could make one of the monsters a Vanguard to get the reroll or something. You might start playing around with it. You might even go, I want my drops down, so I'll drop Corpse Cart, and I'll put something else in. But I think those sort of things come with time.
Yeah.
But most armies, I don't think many armies will be that lower drop. I think 5 is going to be quite common, so it's going to put you on a pretty even keel.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do.
Yeah.
So I would take Hunters of the Halfland to make your monsters immune, and then I would take the 1-drop to lower your drops down, and then just slot in the extras just outside formations, because you don't have to be in unlike 40k, you don't actually have to be in any of these. You can just have your army outside. So
right.
Whereas I know in 40k you're quite pinned into those force organizations.
Yeah. There's kind of, well, I say there's ways around it. There isn't really. There's if you only do something daft like take a random super heavy, then you can, but it costs you 6. One. It costs command points and a hefty chunk of them. So
yeah, but I think that's pretty much the list then. Like as we've described it.
I think it'll look really good on the table, John. It's like I said, you've got different heights there. You've got a wide variety of types of units. It's very fast in general. Like the slowest thing in that army is a dog.
Corpse cart, I think.
Corpse cart on.
So yeah,
excluding the corpse cart, everything is just going to rocket across the table super quick, and it's just that's an option.
The obvious switch that I would make if I was trying to be a bit more techy and a bit more unlock a formation is drop Radikar the Beast for a Vengorian Lord and change the corpse cart for Ratsa the Rat Prince.
right,
And that would probably net be okay because you need 15 more points. You'd still have 20 points left, which means you might get a triumph as well. So the way triumphs work is, although you get to pick one, if your army's less points than your opponent, then you would end up with a bonus ability you can use. So what I will do is I will write both lists out for you with the cheat sheet bit, and I'll pick them over to you. And then you can decide which one you want to play with, or you can play around with both and just see what works for you. Because I think you've already like picked up a few models, so I think you've got a Rat Prince from what I saw. So
with if say Radikar was dropped for the Vengorian Lord, that would take one of the groups of direwolves away, wouldn't it? Because he summons one unit of 10, but there would still be space for the other 10.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you would still have 10 direwolves
in your
two big
army.
monsters. There's 2 Feldbats. So basically, because you've got that to start, but if he was the Vengo Lord, you would end up with 20 direwolves. So it depends on what you want to do, but obviously like Radukar the Beast with that +1 attack is quite powerful if you get that comboed with the zombie dragons and Lauka in a combo charge. That could be quite nasty. So it's entirely up to you, like what you think plays better. You get a little bit more magic. You get a second place to put artifacts. You get to unlock a different battalion, but really they're not that important, like the core battalions. Like if you unlock it will lower your drops if you keep it in the same ones, but if you take Vanguard, it increases your drops, so it's much of a muchness. You basically get a free run 6 or reroll charge without costing a command point, but you've got command points anyway, so I don't think it's that big. So
okay,
that's so
I hope that wasn't too head screwy. There is once you've got your army, there's a lot more left at the end.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'm thinking about like
Planning mode.
Yeah. I've gone into planning mode suddenly. Sorry.
It's I mean, hopefully that's given you enough of a kind of like starting point and like, oh yeah, I like that, I like this and that, and like if you start down the journey and you go, yeah, okay, I'll change it slightly because I've actually not that keen on that, or you can just,
or I just don't like those models, or don't want to paint them
around. But I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Radikar the Beast, but he doesn't benefit from the Avangori dynasty rules. So you might think a Vengorian Lord's better. Then you put Ritzer in, and then drop the corpse cart, and then you're back. So what benefits does like Ritzer actually have in terms of? Does he do a lot, or is he just a nice looking model that
he can
fits?
He can pop back to life in quite an annoying fashion, and he still attacks like a Vampire Lord, which is, I think, 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage D3, which is, fairly solid for a dude. He's another point for you to be able to use command points from. But I think, I don't think it matters too much in your army, though, because stuff either is a hero or has a champion, or will probably be next to a hero.
Crits are the Rat Prince. One of the things he's 6 wounds, 4 up save, but what basically he's a 95 point hero, which is a sub commander, which allows you to unlock other formations. He has this ability that he's -1 to hit in melee, and if he dies at the end of your movement phase on a 4+, you get to set him up again. So he's like a model that might die and come back. Obviously he projects a death save, he's still got 4 attacks at damage D3, so he's okay. I mean, he's a little bit like a little bit much of a muchness, but it's like sometimes you just want a model stood somewhere, so it's like fine. He doesn't really add anything other than the fact he's cheap and he unlocks the configuration. So it's I think
he's quite cool, but he's not like, he doesn't fit in with the entire theme of the army. Huge.
Yeah.
Whereas like Radukar adds a lot. He gives you like an extra unit. He gives you, but you're sacrificing the Vengo.
Yeah.
The corpse cart does more for your army than what he does.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it's just if you wanted to play around with stuff, you could squeeze those extra points in. It might be the case that you just straight swap Radukar and end up with 15 points saved and just leave it at that. But it's or like that's more than that. It'd be like 35 points. But then like there's little options like, do you want to then look at endless spells and things like that? So the like Emerald Life Swarm could be particularly good for healing, or you know, do you want to look at stuff like Chronomatic Cogs for +1 to charge, or rerolling your cast or get extra spell? I think it is now.
See, that's the endless spell stuff is just stuff that I have absolutely no kind of no experience of at all. I mean, there's obviously there's stuff in 40k that kind of like faction specific terrain and stuff, but I don't know I don't know how similar endless spells are to that. I mean, I'm assuming, well, given that is there faction specific terrain for AOS as well as endless spells?
Yeah,
but I take the endless spells are like more generic. So if you're playing, you can only use the faction specific terrain for that faction. But endless spells is just, here's a big list of stuff you can make something out of it, and
it's in the GHB. Everyone's got access to them, and then each faction, generally speaking, has its own 3 that are available
specific
as well.
Right.
We do have a series of videos about AOS 3, and one of them is all about endless spells and how they work. So without like derailing too much, I'd say watch that. You know, obviously that might help, but basically they're a spell that has a model. It's a way to think about it. So like a psychic, is it psychic powers they have in 40k? So
you summon it, you control it,
you cast it like a spell, which then gives you a model that can move around and do stuff.
Right.
So you can, if they're called predatory, you can control them. If your wizard that summoned it dies, they go wild. And they get to like, both players get to push it around depending on who's going it is.
Right.
They might do mortal wounds, they might reduce your movement, they might give you bonuses to cast. There's one that's like a set of mirrors that allows you to cast a spell through one and project out the other one. So it's like an range extender. So they're quite important when you get into certain lists. I would say your list they're not, and I would say avoid it to give you and once you play people with them, you'll be going,
you'll have no idea,
what's that do? And then like you'll see how they work on the table, and then you might start looking at them and go, oh, I quite like that. You know, there's some quite funky ones. You know, you've got like the big purple sun that goes out and does loads of damage. You've got like you know, like chains that wrap you up, and a wall of like skulls that's like a grave tide. It's like all the graves just like pushing like a wave, like a wave.
Nice.
Palisade, which is like a shining barrier that protects against missiles and things like that. So it's there's some cool stuff in there. I would say like life swarms particularly, because like a group of insects that follows you around and heals you. So it's like a sort of a healing swarm. So there might be a particularly like cool modeling idea. Like you could make that as a swarm of bats as a model, or like, you know, they wrap themselves around your hero or something. You wanted to theme them. They're quite cool. Factions also get their own ones. Soulblight don't have any, but like for example, Flesh Eaters get like a wall of like grasping hands, for example, and like a Chalice of Azuran, which is like a blooded chalice that gets powered up by things getting killed, which allows you to drink the blood and heal your characters and stuff. So they're quite cool. Like I think my favorite ones are the Nighthaunt ones. There's like a vault of souls that kind of collects all the souls inside it, and I like the Mortalis Terminexes, which is basically a big hourglass that like you either slow down or speed up depending on what you want to do. So you like tilt the hourglass for different effects. So it's there's a big
they're quite
size.
computer gamey.
Yeah,
I think a lot of them have an AOE effect or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Is it the Nighthawk ones that have got the massive scythe?
yeah.
That's cool.
I've resisted the urge to get those specifically for
Looks
that.
good.
Yeah.
Looks good on a tree man. Looks very
That's-
good on a tree man.
Yeah,
It's
that's
very
what I
nice.
didn't want to hear.
It's also like I quite like the there's one in the generic set called the pendulum. It's like the penundral pendulum, and it's basically like you point it in a direction and it just goes in that line, and everything it hits takes damage. So you can almost imagine it's like swinging across the battlefield. It's quite cool. So they're really interesting. I mean, different armies have different ones, like, and they can add a lot to an army. Like some armies just flat out don't work without them.
Yeah.
Because you've built around that.
Around magic.
The problem with endless spells is they can be unbound when you cast it, and they can be removed when they're on the table. So it's you need a strong magic phase for them, and your list doesn't really have that.
No, I think they're also a good thing to not include initially, just to lower the layers of stuff to manage. And it makes it quite simple for you, rather than casting your own. Maybe just get rid of your opponents because you don't want to deal with them.
Yeah, something to be said for keeping it simple. But hopefully that's a good start for you. And
definitely.
We would be interested to see how you get on with your journey. It'd be like to have an update when you've got some models together and stuff. I'm sure you'll be doing some stuff on your channel that people can check out.
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to go through and pretty much anything and everything to do with building the army and converting it and painting it up is going to be turned into videos and kind of hopefully chronicle it all up until the point of actually going to the tournament. And
I think watching the journey will be properly interesting for people.
Yeah, and it's one of the things cliched, we say journey over destination because it's one of the tenants from from a series of books we're particularly keen on. But it's kind of like we say that the whole point is that journey of discovery is what makes the hobby so cool. So no one wants to be given the answer, take this, and then told only take this as the best thing. Because the good thing about AOS 3 is everyone's almost had a big reset on their journey, and just encourage people to play games and find out what works for them. So hopefully that's working for you. But
definitely.
Cool. All right.
Amazing.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. And I'd say check out your channel for people who watch us who don't know who you are or haven't followed you already. Appreciate it. And let us know how you get on with your army because I'm really interested to see.
Yeah, definitely. I've like I said, I got immediately into like planning mode and working out what to do with different things to fit them all together. And it's something that I feel like probably if I ever wasn't so kind of set on the thing that I've played for the longest, I imagine really if I'd have given AOS a proper look earlier on, then it would have been something I kind of got interested in sooner. But I think there's also a lot to be said for when you've like grown up on one thing and that's the thing that you have kind of really cemented yourself into. It's kind of easy to get a bit almost pigeonholed and just be like, well, this is what I'm used to, this is what I know, so I'm gonna just keep going with this. But the kind of the changes to it and the just all the different like really, really good models that have kind of made me look at 40k and go, that's fine, but look at this. This is like, I want all of these things. I need to.
It's all new as well to you, isn't it? You've done 40k for however long. You're very used to painting armored things, and now you think I'm building fleshy, furry nightmares. Which
it's also
a lot more of.
Something that I can't stress enough is how interesting it is watching it AOS kind of grow the way it has, because 40k kind of just by the very nature of what it is the setting is pretty stagnant.
They didn't blow up the world so they could start again.
That's the thing with it all being completely fresh and then being able to just take any sort of idea and go, yeah, sure, we'll do that. Like the one that really, the thing that kind of sparked interest the most was the Ideneth Deepkin, just because it felt like an absolutely out of left field idea where someone just went, "Should we make deep sea elves? Why not?" And I hadn't previously even thought that they would do something like that, because the idea of it for I'm assuming for Warhammer Fantasy, I don't have a deep knowledge of that, but I don't remember, when people played at my local club when I was like 14, 15, I don't remember seeing giant turtles floating around on the tabletop. But like that specific instance was like, oh wow, they're really exploring whatever they can do with this. That's really cool. I really like how fresh and different that is to anything that I've seen before. So
I love it. And like, even like being in like from the early days and seeing the way the lore is evolving with the game. So like, maybe you don't know, but like each version of the game is like set around an era of the story. So like AOS 1 was what they called the Realm Gate Wars, and that's like Sigmar unleashing the Stormcast, trying to take back control from Chaos. And then the second game was we had the Malign Portents leading up to it, which was there's all this weird stuff going on. And then the Gash unleashed his Necroquake, and the wave of that was the Nighthaunt, was the brow of the wave as it swept across the mortal realms, which are all like the different realms. And then you had the cities of Sigmar established from the sort of the summer campaign, and they've made a foothold. And then you've got all the stuff with like that wave had consequences because the Chaos Gods tried to undo the ritual as he was doing it with Skaven, and it kind of happened, but it didn't quite happen. And then the Sigmar had used these penumbral engines, where there was a thing called Forgotten Power, where he'd use these engines to make people forget what was there, so they'd never see the big like vault with all these secrets in. Which he stole that from Teclis. So Teclis had gave him the knowledge, and then Sigmar kind of twisted it to do this insidious thing that made Teclis a bit angry. And then you've got all the threads with the elves and Slanesh, and the sort of the Teclis and like Tyrion and Marathi trying to get to godhood. So in Broken Realms, she's ascended to god level. And then you've got the throughout the Necroquake, that's what unleashed the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, because they were Nakash's hidden mockery of the Stormcast that were hidden in these. And Catacross was sealed in one of these vaults by Sigmar, and by the wave disrupting the engines, it allowed him to be discovered. And then, so all this lore is so rich and it's so interesting. It's so different. Even things like Gardas getting lost who's one of the Stormcast heroes from Hallowed Knights, getting lost in the Garden of Nurgle because he basically saw a Great and Clean One coming from a gate in Gairan when they resurrected Alariel. And he basically hit her in the face. It hit this, not her, obviously not her, that would be a bad thing. Hit the Great and Clean One in the face through the gate and ended up in the Garden of Nurgle. And then he's wandering around the Garden of Nurgle, and then he gets rescued and he gets pulled out of the Garden of Nurgle. So he's actually like been surviving on his own in Nurgle's garden like for a period of time. So there's all this really interesting lore. I would, if you don't, you might know of the channel, but if you haven't checked out 2+ Tough, his channel is all about lore, and it's really good when you're painting to listen if you want to get into the background of the story. And Idoneth are particularly interesting because what they've tended to done in Age of Sigmar is they've really lent into the darkness more.
Evil good guys.
Yeah, because they literally they were like ripped from Sanesh's grasp. And the reason they've retreated to the dark places like the Ether Sea is because Teclis looked at them and said they're abominations and wanted to murder them all, even though technically they're his children. And
oh, nice.
the Namarti don't have souls. So what they do is they go out and get souls to make their children exist. So they literally, like the Ether Sea, when they attack, there's like an ethereal sea, which is why they're like in the ocean, but they're not actually in the water. It's a magical sea, and they just descend on a town and steal a load of people and take their souls so they can exist. And these are good guys, right? So
I was going to say they're in like Grand Alliance order, aren't they?
Yeah,
this is why you can cover them all in blood and it's fine. So
but
they're
like,
excellent for that.
Order is not necessarily good.
Yeah, it's maintaining control, but it's not
establish an order of things, whether that's your kingdom. And this is why Nagash is the ultimate order champion. because I just to let you know that I'm a bit of a fan. So Nagash is basically like wants everyone to be a dead servant. So obviously he wants the most order out of everyone, right? So let's just he's the best, right? Let's just and Sigmar is basically lying to everyone, because if you actually break down what Sigmar's done, he's taken people who are like desperate and dying in battle to chaos, and he's gone, I can rescue you and you could become a Stormcast Eternal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically forge you, which is going to be really painful. Then I'm going to throw you into conflict where you will die. You'll go back, I'll reforge you, which is even more painful, and I'll throw you back into the front again. And every time you die, you lose a little bit more of yourself and you become less and less who you are. And you're like, that's a good guy, right? That's a good thing, right? Like that's not a good guy.
Yeah.
So everyone who thinks Sigmar's a good guy, that is not true.
That's the thing that I really like about that kind of like dark fantasy side of things.
Yeah.
Where it's absolutely nothing is actually black and white. There's all sorts of, even the ones who on the face of it might look like they are the ones being heroic and are painted as heroic, like the Stormcast, because they all look, like shining beacons of, look how amazing this is. But actually they're kind of turning hollow, like in Dark Souls, just dying over and over again. And I really like that side of things. It's the kind of like approach to like fantasy and fiction that I tend to gravitate towards.
Same
as it is.
Keeps it wide open modeling wise as well. So basically anything you want to do, there's probably a story to back it up.
Yeah. That was another thing. That was another thing that really made me appreciate just how kind of varied everything in Age of Sigmar was that moment where I built the weird Ambot, like used the Ambot kit to make these kind of like steampunk knights almost, and went, what is this? Just the fact that without any hesitation as well, it wasn't a kind of, oh well, actually you've put it on a round base so you can't do that. It wasn't like, oh well, it doesn't really fit. It was just, well, that absolutely works as this, just straight away. And the kind of immediate acceptance of something that is just not even, like, I'm perfectly happy to admit, not even close to what the actual models are that are for sale, but was still just, I recognize this as being that model from that realm, or that unit from that realm. It was like a kind of thing of, sometimes if I'll put something weird on a 40k model, I'll get people going, why did you do that?
It's because it kind of has to be what you see is what you get, doesn't it, in 40k? Whereas because you're just like, I bought 10 dudes, this is what 10 dudes do. They're clearly 10 dudes. You can give them all scythe if you want, or have them climbing out from portals, and it doesn't make a difference at all to have it on the table.
It just feels like there's a lot more freedom in how to you approach kit bashing and modeling in general, and kind of army themes, and the fact that there's the different realms all have the different themes to them. And I mean, I posed a question on Twitter a while ago. I was like, could you do like some form of undead army, but linked to like the realm of life? Could you manage that? And someone straight away went, well, yeah, of course. It's, well, they seem like counterintuitive, but immediately the answer was, well, yeah, why not? Okay,
and
cool.
Actually,
that's
like,
awesome.
In the Broken Realm series, Nagash, what he wanted to do was build these nadirs in the other realms, which allows him to channel more souls into the realm of death. And he even sent Manfred, Nephrata, and Arcan out to make these footholds, and I think Realm of Life was one of them. And that was and they tried to distract. So Manfred went through and basically went, well, I'm going to go and send a force to attack Nurgle, so they get distracted because Nurgle have got a very big foothold in the realm of life, even though Lavriel's kind of come out and done a bit of whoop ass. But this is what I like about it, like the story's ever changing, and the idea of like the realms aren't fully explored or explained. There's a lot more freedom than there was in the old world, where there was a lot of like, this is what they do, this is where they live, this is what they, and like there's, now you've got the Cities of Sigmar is super interesting because they've really lent into this, like, not just, there are a bunch of people who live here and they fight, they're like, how do they live? What resource do they have? So you've got like the Kradron Overlords are all about like the Aether Gold, and they harvest that. And then you've got like the Aether Quartz and all this Realm Stone. And then you find out that Kragnos become a god because he basically got high on Realm Stone so much. He become the god of earthquakes. And then the destruction guys are like, we like that guy. He crumps hard. We're going to follow him. And but not too closely. And like Kragnos has basically been asleep for so long, he's woken up and gone, what's going on? Where is everything? I don't care, there's stuff to kill, go. And that's basically what he's about. And I think like there's so much, even in the book, and the core book is beautiful, the hardback, and you've got the realm maps, and they've got all these edges where you just don't know. They don't explain it, it's just on there. And there's lots of leads. And like, there's some really cool characters. I think like the world itself is so rich, and Phil Kelly particularly, and the team there have done such a good job at really making this world interesting and varied. And I love the fact it's not black and white. And even Broken Realms Marathi is all about Marathi deceiving people. And there's a Stormcast guy called Van Brecht who gets freed. We turn up later on. I won't spoiler it, but by somebody important who goes and basically decides that she's not up to no good, and he basically like challenges her and outs her in front of everyone because she tricks some Stormcast, stops them being able to go back and warn Sigmar, where she steals a load of Varanite to do the ritual to become a god, and she stole power from Sinesh, which then splintered off a bit of energy, which became the progeny of Sinesh, which is Sinessa and Dexessa, the two new models. So it's just really interesting that that there's all these threads they're pulling on, and there's so much inspiration for armies and what you want to do that, you know, I'm loving it at the moment. It's great.
Yeah, it just feels like it feels like you can look at any part of any of it and just create your interpretation of it, and there's not really that much standing in the way. It's just a case of here's a mass of different models, and you can do so many different things, and it's not just like accepted, it's also like encouraged. Like
absolutely.
Just putting something on Twitter and going, I made this, what is it? Oh, well, it's this. When are you going to make this version of that? It's like, oh, okay. So apparently I need to do that now as well, because it's okay, cool. Yeah.
I know, like Vince has done a load of crazy like gargants with like machinery on them, like Skaven contraption gargants using a lot of 40k bits, which are cool.
I using like Imperial Night parts. I noticed for some of them, and I've one of the gargants, one of the mega gargants he did. I immediately was like, where did you get that amazing sword from? Because it's got like a massive straight blade sword with like an angle at the top of it, and I didn't recognize it as being part of anything Games Workshop makes. It's like, oh, it's a Gale Force 9 giant for D&D. It's like, oh, okay, that's awesome. All the responses were just, that looks quality, and no one was like, what's the sword about? It was just, yes, more, cool. do this again.
Yeah, for your
absolutely. We'd be super happy if you ever want to come on and spitball conversion ideas, or run something by us, or just have like throw stuff against the wall until we find something that sticks. Then by all means, we'd be super happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be really good as well. That'd be fun.
Okay.
Amazing.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming on. I think we should wrap it up there. And thanks everyone for checking out the video. Like and subscribe, do the algorithm stuff. We've still got a competition for people who become members or patrons for Dominion and vouchers and things. So sign up before 15th of July, you'll get entered into that. But thanks very much for watching, and we'll catch you all again soon.
Cheers, John. Thanks, guys. Catch you in a bit.
No worries.